Hi, this is Bridget with the SOM podcast, and welcome back, everyone. Um, Today, we're going to be talking about Washington, D.C., and the latest Doge downturn and displacement, as well as displacement of just folks in Washington, D.C., and where those jobs have gone, or government opportunities, rather, have gone. So I can answer that real quick. They have gone nowhere and folks have just been displaced. So there's a massive pool of people that are out on the streets looking for work and employment. But what I really wanted to address today is the economic disparity between Black people and white people in this country. More specifically, I'm going to take it back down to a micro level, Black women. So let's start with this. Black women historically and currently, we face such occupational segregation. And some of the reasons for that is that we just don't belong to the club. And when you don't belong to the majority club, you don't have access to what's going on. And so the latest initiatives with DEI doesn't help any of the folks that were trying to be included. There's an exclusivity as opposed to an inclusivity. So the DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at most companies, and certainly within the government has kiboshed all of that. There seems to be a lack of understanding in that we don't need DEI. It's a meritorious country and emeritus job opportunity, so to speak, and everybody should just go for what they know, and then that's fair. Well, I'll be the first to tell you that I never got in on a DEI. However, it is needed. It is needed because there are certain people that will never be in the club, that will always be excluded from the club. And the club is just folks that are in the know about job opportunities. No one's asking to hire unqualified people. And I think that's the misnomer and the misconstrued ideology here is that most people that are against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, want to exclude because they think it's unfair because folks have access. And what they don't know and what they're ignorant to is that people do not have access without that type of programming to level the playing field. So we already know that there's systemic bias in every institution in this country, and there's no denying it. You can ban all the books you want, you can deny history, you can do all of that, but there's no denying that there is systemic racism, structural racism, and exclusivity in most institutions, beginning but not exclusive to the education system in this country. It is outrageous to think that a poor neighborhood can't get the same level of education as an affluent neighborhood because the affluent neighborhood pays more in taxes, therefore they get more. Well, the affluent neighborhood is affluent for a reason. It's exclusive. You can't get into the club unless you can buy a certain dollar amount of house. If you can't buy that house, you can't live there and you can't be educated to the extent that you can get into a higher education system and learn differently. So here you've got all these folks at the bottom rung, is what I'm going to say, because it's systemic and it always has been. And it's always going to be if folks don't open their eyes and become woke. That's another thing that I'm going to talk about in this podcast, that, people have made woke bad. It's not bad. I would much rather be awake than dead. So there's two alternatives. You could be awake and in the living, or you could be dead and not going anywhere, you know? So while we're living, I'd much rather be woke, which is informed. Just stay informed of what's going on, how and what is happening and where, and then everyone can get in the pool and play or play in the sandbox nicely. But there's such an initiative to keep people out of the sandbox and out of the pool and out of the country club that no one can learn the way that they learn. And that's excluding people and not including people. And that, my dears, that is wrong. It's wrong on every level. Because if not for the grace of God, where would you be? And you better be careful, because to whom much is given, much is required. So while you're out there doing evil, and evil is just wrongdoing, cutting people off and, out of education, out of access to bank loans, out of everything, you're excluding people, and that's not right. It simply isn't right. So to have gotten and done away with all the DEI initiatives, that was incredibly, I want to say stupid, but I can't really call it that. So let me find another word. Um, it was wrong. It was wrong-headed. It was ignorant, because you just don't know what you did. You don't know what you did. And if you don't know the full ramifications of what you're doing, why are you doing it? So let's get back to the structural racism and how racial and gender discrimination in hiring, promotion, pay contributions, etc., all lead to occupational segregation. So occupational segregation just means that there are top tier jobs and there are lower tier jobs. And so when you segregate to that extent, which there's always going to be layers, because you need different layers in this country to make it work in order to get the job done. So everybody is not going to be the CEO of Apple. Everybody's not going to be the CEO of HP or Home Depot or some other large corporation or a banking outfit, because there's only one CEO. So that's understood. So folks might chomp at the bit, or you might go to a selective recruiter to be seen, to be heard, to be interviewed for those opportunities, pending your experience or pending, the country club and how the golf round went. So let's just say that the pay contribution in this country and how it works. And it's almost laughable at the Bible Belt, because they aren't getting it. They've been systemically conditioned to think that if you give a person a chance that's of color, they just took away everything from you. Everything. And you're not giving people a chance to be better than you. You're just making it right. What you've done systemically to push people back. And so they think in the South, where it's like dirt poor, in some areas of Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, the rural parts where it's just so poor and poverty stricken. And they keep the people ignorant and feed them all kind of propaganda and garbage and make them gullible. And if you tell people something long enough, they'll believe it. They'll believe it, which is what's going on now. So they're in essence hurting themselves by voting certain ways and, going against DEI measures and so forth. Now, there's lots of women in these rural areas. They just cut their nose off to spite their faces, because women weren't included until the 1920s to even think about voting. The suffragette and the suffragist movement. You have to go back and study history, but once again, a lot of those things in books are banned. They're not going to teach you that, because they want to keep you gullible and ignorant to what is really going on. So DEI really helped women overall. And now women in those areas don't have the opportunities because they've voted against it. They voted against and betted against themselves. That is so crazy to me. I can't even begin to express to you, but people don't know what they don't know. Now, from a historical context of all of this, the legacy of slavery and policies around it limited opportunities, one for women, two for Blacks, and three, especially for Black women. Women are a lot that, have really helped this country, but men don't see it that way. Men want complete and total control of women, more specifically, white men that are conservatives and policy legislators. They see things quite different because of generational patterns in not only their households, but in their politics and in their isms. It's just generational. They're just conditioned. And they really believe this stuff. Some of them are evil and do it, and they know they don't believe it. And some of them just are so ignorant, they believe this. They actually believe these things. I'm just appalled and concerned that people don't take the time to really understand and pick up a book or a newspaper or a news feed and to understand. That is the very definition of staying ignorant. And ignorant means you just don't know what you don't know. So anybody can feed you anything. And that's what's happening in this country. People are choosing to stay ignorant because they're too lazy to pick up a book and read about it. They're too lazy to read a newspaper. They're too lazy to watch objective reporting from notable reporters that have gone to school for journalism and communication and that take a vow and an oath to report the truth and have to be fact checked. They'd rather get on TikTok or some opinion news feeds and hear things in hearsay. And they never fact check anything. They just go on what people tell them. And that to me, it means that you're going to get where you get at the end of the day. You're going to get what you get every time, which is people telling you what to do, where to go, how to be, and you fall right in line. Because what else can you do? What else are you going to do at that point? You're poor as dirt at that point, and so you just fall in line. And then you get angry and full of rage. And then you want to kill people and maim people because you think your opportunities are going away. But you deliberately chose to stay ignorant. You deliberately chose to stay ignorant. And then you blame other people for taking your opportunity when you didn't do anything to better yourself. Nothing but listen to commentators and the like. It's absolutely stunning and appalling to me. Okay, so we talked about structural racism, historical context. Let's talk about the workplace climate now, because many DEI measures are taken out now. It used to be something that folks got shamed into doing because they never did it, never thought they had to do it. So they kept inviting their friends and friends of friends and members of the club. And there were qualified people all around that could bring value to the table. They never looked at them. I can attest to this firsthand from my decades in corporate America. I absolutely can attest to it, but that's another podcast episode for another day. So the workplace climate, it sort of undervalued folks that and didn't put people in leadership positions based on merit. They would just choose friends of friends. And that is so crazy. And nepotism just ran rampant. And people were not qualified in those jobs, but they kept putting them in. And as a a result, companies kind of suffered and stocks declined and so forth until, DEI became a thing. And so now they hire people from other countries that don't have the expertise in technology. They hire people that don't look like them from, different communities to learn things so that the companies can be better. And now they've done away with it all. It's shameful. It's shameful. And, we're going to be not better for it in the long run. It's a type of hyper rebellion so that I hate to say this, but the majority that are making these decisions are white men. And I have white neighbors, I have white friends, and my family have married white men. So I'm not bashing white men. I'm saying that the political ideologies and the circle that are making these policies come from the conservative groups, evangelical groups that know, good Lord, they know they're doing wrong. But again, it's systematic. Since slavery, the evangelicals justified slavery. They justified beating people, killing people. They knew it was wrong. That was the evangelical church. And so they've raised people generationally through there. And they really, some of them believe that, they're the superior lot and that God looks out for them first, and to hell, literally, with everybody else. And so they move in that regard, but they talk about God and Jesus and all this other stuff, and they don't live accordingly. It's a very sad lot. And they're all throughout that conservative Republican Party. And some are in the conservative Democratic Party, which were part of the old Dixiecrats that just never conformed to the GOP because they wanted to stay Dixiecrats, but they called themselves Democrats. One such, I truly believe, was Joe Manchin. Now he's running as an independent now. He calls himself an independent. He was part of that generational pool in the poorest place in the United States, just about in West Virginia, and he owns a yacht. Come on, people, get smart in West Virginia. Please get smart as to what's going on. Okay, I beat that dead horse. So what's going on with all of these initiatives and letting go of all these talented people in these places seems a little methodical to me and calculated. And the latest numbers kind of show this. There just seems to be an attack somehow or another on, Black women. I'm just going to say, there's many news feeds and so forth of getting rid of Black people in jobs, getting rid of Black women in leadership positions. But I will tell you, some of the best things came from Black women. And you can ban all the books you want, but I'm going to give you a small snippet of history right now. That GPS navigation system, a Black woman. The reason you have central air and central heat in your home, a Black woman. Black women figured out the coordinates and the math to get our country in orbit, to get to the moon. That's just three. They hid all of that in history. But Black women and Black people knew that. We know our history. We don't deny our history. We know our history. And we teach our history to our children. And we teach our history in our schools, in our communities. Now, they come in and they take the principal out once he starts teaching the history and so forth. They fire people, they fire teachers, tell them they can't teach that and so forth and so on. But you cannot deny history. History is history. And so the thing with Black women is that we've always had a hard time since we were brought over on slave ships. That was not immigration, folks. It wasn't. We were taken, stolen, forced to have babies. We were raped, we were maimed, we were hung up in trees, we were killed. We had Uncle Toms in the group trying, just tricking on us, because we were helping our people to be better so that they wouldn't be beaten, so that they wouldn't be maimed, so that they wouldn't cut their feet off and their hands off, and so forth and so on. And Uncle Tom's would trick on us anyway, and run back to the master for an extra piece of bacon the next day. And that's all they got. The beat still goes on because that's a sort of conditioning. But I will tell you this one thing. Black women have been saving and saving and saving and saving and figuring stuff out for so long, never getting any credit and always being pushed back. One, because you're a woman. Two, because you're Black and you're not supposed to be in the know. You're not supposed to hit the spotlight. You're not supposed to hit the radar. But we have a certain strength. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it loud and clear. I'm going to say it loud and clear. You cannot take what God has given. You can't. You cannot take a gift that God has put in someone. Now, you can kill it. You can, like they kill Dr. King, they kill, just kill people of excellence that are just speaking up and speaking out for excellence and truth and leveling the playing field. But there'll be 10 others that pop up because God has put that in them, and that's the gift. So, and then what have you done? You have to look at what have you done, because you'll have to pay for that. And you can Hail Mary, Mother of Grace all you want. And that is not going to save you because you continue to do it. And you're continuing to do it. And it's festering so greatly in this country that it's almost shameful. No, it's not almost shameful. It's shameful. The thing with Elon Musk blew me away. Blew me away. He says that there needs to be more government efficiency. He's bought his way into the presidency, and he was taken to Washington and took our country to task. This is a man, and I'm going to give you the backdrop. This is a man that grew up in South Africa, which is where all the white people took from all the Black people, systemically held them back, didn't let them own anything or have anything worth anything. It was worse than slavery, just about. And that happened in modern day times. He was a part of that. His parents were a part of that. So the conditioning and the mentality of that was with him. So he leaves South Africa and he goes to Canada because some people want what they want, and they take advantage of government that will lean towards them to get what they want, whether it be funding for their ideas, et cetera, which is what he did. So he wasn't the biggest hit in Canada. So he figures out, I can go up to the United States. They have grants, they have opportunity. I can see my work's through this or that. And he comes in and he gets all of this funding for all of his entrepreneurial ideas. And then he talks about the welfare people. He's the biggest welfare king there is. So tell me, how do you get all the free money to get all your programs through and your ideas through, and the average entrepreneur can't get a $10,000 bank loan? Make me smart, people. Make me smart. So he goes in, because he bought his way into the presidency and the Oval Office. He goes in and he destroys thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of jobs. Just took an axe to all of these organizations. And now people are displaced, scrambling, and their livelihoods are at stake. But he was so busy doing evil and bringing Afrikaners here while we were kicking out all people of colors, whether they had visas, work visas, just go back home. We don't want you here. So he's bringing white Afrikaners here, saying they're discriminated against in South Africa. because they can't get this and they can't get that. They don't have education. They don't have the means. They were just used to handouts and getting and giving, being given things. And then when they can't find opportunity, they cry discrimination. Are you kidding me? And he brings them here under Trump, the Afrikaners. And they thought that they were going to be kings and queens once they got here. Are you kidding? There are people in line to get jobs. And you thought you were just going to come here and step in front of everybody because Elon Musk brought you here? Via Trump and those policies and kicking all the people of color out of here and telling they're rapists and they're this. If they are gang members, if they are part of evil, get them out of here. I'm the first one on the bandwagon. I don't care what you look like or what color you are, get them out of here. But people that were here and had work visas and were here to help our country and were building community and under immunity and had seeken asylum the right way, and that wasn't done right. It wasn't right, because now you got to look at all the Europeans that are here illegally, the Greeks, the Polish, the Croatians. You got to look at all the Europeans. You got to look at the Russians. You got to look at all of them, the Eastern Europeans, all of them, folks from Italy, folks from everywhere. Look at all the white Europeans that are here. If you're kicking out the folks of color, you got to kick them out too. That's not happening. That's insane to me. So getting back to the work pool, Black women typically are truth seekers, and we stand up for what's right, and we teach our children what's right, and we try very hard in our family units. And then the family unit got so broken through creating projects and letting drugs infiltrate our neighborhoods and then blaming us for the drug problem. And the government knows. They knew where the drugs were coming from. They knew they were being pushed through our community. And what did you expect when you took out every economic opportunity out of the communities, such as jobs, corporations, and you let drugs come through? What did you think was going to happen? Of course, it was going to become survival of the fittest, in a poverty situation. And no good ever comes of that. And so, the Black community is still scrambling. Black mothers, you separate the dads because the dads are selling drugs and they're gang members and so forth. What did you think they were going to do? And they had no means to get out to the suburbs to work. There's no transportation system. They couldn't afford cars. They had to stay in their neighborhoods. The government was a big part of designing that through ignorance. I'll never forget the Reagans, just say no to drugs. Just say no. Like, you could take heroin and say no. Like, you could take fentanyl and say no. You could take an opioid and continue to say no. They only got it when their kids were dropping like flies. They only got it when the housewives were hooked on painkillers. Just say no now. Maybe we should have turned on them and said, just say no. That wouldn't have been right either. But you see how wrong-headed some policies were? And you jailed people for less than an ounce of marijuana for 15, 20 years and took them away from their families. It was just outrageous, outrageous. But I will tell you, through certain legislation, we have pushed and pushed and pushed to right size the playing field, so to speak. And now there's over 300,000 displaced Black women, if you count it. the population of Black people in this country isn't as great as, just looking on the news, you think there's Black people everywhere, which it looks like it because we're out mostly, we're out in public a lot. But it's smaller, you know, than one would think. And so to impact 300,000 Black women and displace them through DEI and through other measures was outrageous. But you know what the saving grace is? Most of those women were so highly educated because Black women are amongst the highest educated in this country for postgraduate degrees. And so we could be a great help. And we're just thinkers, strategic thinkers, and we're not afraid to say what we think. And we don't kowtow and we don't commiserate in groups. And because this one thinks like this, I better not say this, I better not say this. We'll say it. We'll say, I think that coordinate is wrong. I think you should try this coordinate. Because if you do this, the gravity won't pull down, it will go up. And then if you put some force behind it through physics, the rocket can go up, the ship can go up. And that's what happens. We're not afraid to say things like that. We're not afraid to sit in the corner when someone says, what do you think? Well, and then you go along with the person that just said something and you knew it wasn't the right thing and you just shut your mouth because you've been told to shut your mouth. Black women have been told to shut our mouths all our lives, and we had nothing to lose at certain points, so we didn't shut our mouths. And so those are the thinkers you need. You need that out of the box thinking. We understand diplomacy. We understand how to get along in corporations and, do what's right. And, we on our paycheck at the end of the week too. So we're going to come in and disrupt things and so forth. We're there to be of assistance and to be of excellence. But you let 300,000 go. But the beauty of that is, out of something bad, something good happens out of everything. And I always say, I'm a girl of faith. So I always say, there is a God. We are so entrepreneurial. All that happened with DEI and dismissing 300,000 Black women, all that did was unleash brilliance on the streets. Watch how this landscape changes. Watch, it's going to be for the better. We've always been for raising up our country. We're patriotic. We love this country because we have built this country. It was built on our backs. And we know that. You don't tell your children that, but we tell our children that. And we understand that. And we educate ourselves to that extent. And we educate ourselves daily to stay abreast of what's going on. And I encourage everyone in this country to stop with the isms and the racism, because in the systemic ism running through our institutions, it's bananas. It's crazy. And it's got to stop. So until next time, this is Bridget with the SOM podcast. I encourage you to stay tuned, to stay up, to stay focused, and don't give up. Keep pushing and keep trying. Just keep trying to make this place and this world a better place. All due respect, ignorance is not bliss. It is not. Keeping your head in the sand is not a good idea. You must stay informed. And I encourage you to be better in your journeys going forward. And if you ever want any other information on any topic or for me to cover a topic, I will be more than happy to do so. In the meantime, folks, have a wonderful, wonderful day.